I know a story about one fool who thought, I'll just order a gun on the darknet, quick and cheap. The money was taken, but the gun never arrived. I know another one, a much craftier fellow. He sold that same gun to 10 different buyers, though he never actually had one to begin with. And what are they gonna do? File a police report? Yeah, good luck with that. People love to spout all sorts of nonsense about the Darknet. They say you can buy a human liver, get recruited by ISIS, or pick up a bioweapon with home delivery. But here's the truth. Most of what you imagine about the Darknet is teenage fantasy, a jumbled mess of horror stories and myths. I've been there and I've seen some things, and I can tell you a thing or two. You don't need Morpheus's red pill to enter the Darknet. You don't need Neo's hacker rig either. Just download Tor, use your head, and welcome to where Google can't reach. Sound sinister? The reality is simpler. You're stepping into a gray area, and in most countries, that won't land you in jail. What matters is your intent for diving in. One of the most popular myths is that the Darknet is almost limitless and hundreds or thousands of times larger than the regular internet. The truth is laughable. The Darknet is tiny. It makes up a mere 0.005% of the entire internet. But that turned out to be more than enough to spawn an entire industry of tall tales. In 2013, the FBI arrested and sentenced Ross Ulbricht, who hid under the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts, to 2 life terms. He was the owner of the Silk Road website, one of the largest marketplaces on the Darknet. It's like Amazon, or more accurately, its dark version. On top of the obviously vile things that were indeed sold on the site, some were made up by people who'd never ventured further than Facebook. For example, many thought you could easily hire a hitman there. In reality, Silk Road had a code: no violence, no murders, no weapons, at least in the site's early days, and no content involving children. Dread Pirate Roberts was less of a mafioso and more of a rebel with a libertarian streak. He believed in a free market, even if it traded in snow. The site made about $15 million a month, but the complete anonymity of the Darknet turned out to be another myth. Ross was locked up and the site was shut down. Silk Road died, but the format lived on. It just got a rebrand: Alpha Bay, Empire, or the Russian Hydra, which spread across the entire post-Soviet space and was pulling in millions of dollars a year, until it was dismantled in 2022. The name is fitting, by the way. The whole industry is like a mythical, immortal beast. You chop off one head, another grows back. And it will continue as long as there's demand and fools willing to use cryptocurrency. Speaking of Ross, that very pirate, he was pardoned by Trump in 2025, but we'll talk about the antics of that dusted orange another time. You can't really surprise anyone with illicit substances anymore. They're sold on regular social networks and even on the street. Is that all this mysterious Darknet with its different levels of depth can boast? Not very impressive. What about human organs? The Darknet is indeed sometimes used for trading organs and medical data, but a significant portion of these transactions happen through other channels, including regular social networks. The biggest danger lies in physical clinics and the exploitation of ordinary people. Reality, for obvious reasons, has become shrouded in a huge number of myths. For example, in 2023, on internet dumpsters whose admins supported the Russian invasion of Ukraine, posts appeared claiming that on a major Darknet marketplace, you could buy organs of Ukrainian soldiers. The price started at 5,000 euros. Black transplantologists are a favorite tall tale of Russian propaganda, one they've been pushing since 2014. A site with a similar assortment does exist, but even a lazy fact check proves it was created solely to illustrate the story about Ukro-Nazis trading their soldiers' organs. The site also sold weapons for show, but it was obvious it was a fake. The weapon descriptions were lifted from Wikipedia, and the site itself was lazily thrown together. On some other marketplaces, you can find similar offers. Everything is for sale, from eyes to livers, almost with home delivery. But the point is, 50% of this is a scam, and the other 50% is a complete ripoff. The scam scheme is simple and, as always, primarily targets desperate people. Someone's relative is in critical condition, needs a transplant, but the waiting list can take years. And right here, the Darknet offers all organs fresh, healthy, and just sitting there like on a supermarket shelf. Someone, I guarantee it, will take the bait and send an advance payment of several thousand. Let's imagine this happens to you. You've been humiliated, dumped, and you want revenge. How convenient that you can order someone to do it for you. Hired hitmen from the Darknet are another myth, and I have a rather interesting story about that. There's nothing easier than deceiving a person burning with revenge. Often such people try to buy weapons and in 9 out of 10 cases become victims of scammers. The smartest of the dumbest delegate revenge to professionals and try to hire a hitman. Spoiler, the vast majority of Darknet hitmen are scammers, but the clients are most often real, and most often, stupid. Here's a classic example. Once, a programmer and Darknet researcher, Chris Montero, stumbled upon the website Besa Mafia, which offered an assortment of hitmen and Jack the Rippers for a certain number of bitcoins. Montero decided to play undercover agent. He created a fake profile, pretended to be a client, and quickly found out there were no hitmen. The admins were extorting money, threatening and blackmailing potential clients. Chris was no fool. He hacked the Mafia site and gained access to all their messages. That's how he read the correspondence of a schizoid who had ordered the murder of his girlfriend. Chris passed the information to the cops, but they didn't believe him at first. Only after persistent efforts did the FBI and British police agree to take the case. It turned out the man was indeed planning a murder. He hadn't just contacted Besa Mafia, but had also hired a real hitman, not some Darknet clown. Thanks to Montero, the police managed to intervene, and the girl survived. The man was arrested, and Montero continued to take down similar hitman startups. So there's the instructive story for you kids. If you want something done, do it yourself. For example, hit like and subscribe. In this story, just like with Silk Road, there's one detail you probably overlooked. How did they find all those people in real life if the Darknet is anonymous? The truth is, this so-called total anonymity is nothing more than a myth. One that's actually pretty laughable. Cybercrime units all over the world regularly track down and easily take down local Tony Montanas and Heisenbergs. Sure, the Tor network offers a certain degree of anonymity, but it's nowhere near absolute. If you start dabbling in crime and become even a somewhat noticeable figure, they'll find you, no matter how much you encrypt yourself. Very often, users expose themselves. Usernames like RealTony1991, shopping on public Wi-Fi at McDonald's without a VPN, and Bitcoin transactions that are ridiculously easy to trace. The FBI didn't break the system. It just read logs and analyzed mistakes. Eventually, it identified Silk Road's server IP address through an admin interface exposed on an open port. A plain old technical slip-up. If you're curious about how to cover your tracks properly, I might explain in the next video. Let me know in the comments. The Darknet is primarily used as marketplaces, and no amount of encryption will save you from undercover agents and sting operations. The only surefire way is to sell nothing at all, or better yet, never dive into the Darknet in the first place. Go fishing instead, or hop on a bike. Hysterical media coverage has shaped the Darknet's image in the public eye. For most people, it's this shadowy place where who knows what happens, and humans are sold like socks. This, in turn, fuels a flood of absurd horror stories that inspire videos, games, and creepypastas. Of course, there's nothing wrong with creativity, but many of these tales end up being taken as fact. They say there are gladiator fights in the Darknet, where hungry homeless people supposedly beat each other to death while anonymous chats cheer them on. Others claim that somewhere in a basement, there are live streams where people are tortured for donations, and the biggest donor can order the finale and decide whether anyone but the executioner leaves the room alive. In reality, over decades, not a single confirmed case of a genuine snuff stream has been uncovered. The FBI, Interpol, and cyber detectives have repeatedly investigated viral leaks, and every time it turns out to be cheap fakes or clips of actual murders that had nothing to do with death matches for money. These legends grew out of 90s urban myths, horror movies, and Reddit creepypastas. People just like to believe there's a place where life is worth less than a like. Movies, shows, and creepypastas spin silly myths that sell cheap scares, and they'll keep doing so for a long time. The truth is simpler and sadder. The gore and brutality you imagine when you hear the word Darknet more often flow through ordinary social media and messengers. No Tor required. Link in description. Just kidding. Telegram, for instance, is infamous for showing death in every imaginable form. So why bother with the Darknet? For obvious reasons, Darknet and crime have become synonymous. But the truth is different. It's a tool, and how it's used depends on the person. You might be surprised, but the Darknet can also serve good purposes. For people in countries with censorship, repression, or restrictions on free speech, it becomes the only safe space for information and human connection. In dictatorships, whether North Korea, China, or Russia, the government blocks independent and opposition media. For people there, the Darknet is often the only way to learn the truth about what's happening outside their borders. In China, for example, you can't even access Wikipedia without Tor. There are forums, blogs, and websites publishing information you won't find in official media. Leaked documents, corruption investigations, or reports from regions where journalism is banned. This is also where activists, human rights defenders, and opposition figures coordinate. During the 2020 protests in Belarus, the Darknet helped activists exchange data about arrests and the moves of the regime's riot police. And during wartime, it can be practically the only way to coordinate and share information in occupied territories. Risky, yes, but still safer than anything else. Want knowledge but limited resources? The Darknet has massive libraries filled with old books, rare comics, scientific articles, everything hidden behind paywalls or censored elsewhere. Think of it as ideological piracy. Unlike the regular internet, the Darknet has a bit of a learning curve. You need to perform a few steps to access it, which already filters out most curious onlookers. But if you do make it here and aren't planning to trade in contraband, you'll still find plenty to explore. Love comics? Check out the Comic Book Library, a collection of rare comics from every era and genre, from the Golden Age to independent and underground creators. There's the Library of Trantor, 500,000 books and articles, some of which can't be found on the regular web. Not because they're banned, but mostly because of copyright law, which doesn't want you learning, or getting smarter, for free. There's also a dark web version of Reddit called Hidden Answers. You can ask anything there, though to be fair, you can also find instructions for dissolving a body on regular Reddit. In general, search works pretty well via DuckDuckGo. Explore, dig in, but don't forget about safety. Stay as anonymous as possible. No personal info. Use a solid VPN and only turn it off once all your Darknet sessions are closed. Dangers range from run-of-the-mill scammers to viruses just waiting to infect your computer. So don't open or download anything, or use a virtual machine to test suspicious files. Otherwise, reality is far less sensational than conspiracy theories and creepypastas. For better or worse, that includes the Darknet. What people trade there most isn't bioweapons, adrenochrome, or stem cells, but personal data and controlled substances. Boring and predictable. Then again, maybe someone paid me off to say that. Who knows? Anyway, sorry if I shattered your rosy vision of the mysterious world of the deep web. I'll be back soon to wreck another one of your illusions. Leave your requests in the comments. Thanks for watching. Maybe we'll meet again.